this says a lot about what should be done. Another issue that was taken into consideration was COVID-19. And we tried to come up with innovative measures to deal with this scourge during that time. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has seen an increase of GBV in some countries. There's been a global increase also of GBV reported cases as a consequence of COVID-19. There is continued outcry from survivors and victims, civil society organizations, the international community, and other stakeholders for effective solutions to address GBV, including putting into place more stringent and innovative measures to ensure that the COVID-19 pandemic does not act as a stimulus for increasing instances of GBV. The GBV model attempts to provide innovative solutions and measures in investigating, assessing, prosecuting, and deciding on and implementing and managing GBV and attended cases. These are very important, the innovative measures. First, you'll see that when you have read the model law now, that some of the principles, long-standing principles of common law, some concepts, legal concepts, in evidence gathering, in coming up with decisions based on evidence in the course of law, have slightly changed. Some of them very drastically changed in the GBV model. We wish that you can support these changes in order to ensure justice to victims of GBV. So, you'll find that the GBV law, as I said earlier, deals with all the issues I've explained. I want to stop here because I know you've read all the parts. The human rights approach, the access to justice provisions, the prohibitions, the measures to ensure effective response to GBV, the measures and strategies we've laid down to ensure education of victims, children, adolescents, and so forth. You have read what we have inserted in relation to data collection, advocacy and training, and provision of adequate financial provisions for the fight against GBV. I don't want to go into the details, and I'll stop now. So to give you time to debate and make amendments to this very important model law that will affect the way you do business in your institutions. It should not be business as usual. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Eva, for that elaborate presentation. Much appreciated. It's an opportunity now for commissioners and other participants to make an input. The input into the model law or ask any questions as you may wish. You can raise your hand or you can just speak. I hope I'm clear that side. Can people hear me?
Hello.
Yes, Bertha.
Thank you so much. I am Bertha Sethi from Malawi.
Apologies, Bertha. Kindly speak of the other devices in the room.
Hello?
I said, kindly switch the sound volume of the other device in the room.
Let me check. Hello?
Yes, Bertha.
Okay. I wanted to say the SADC model law on gender-based violence is a very welcome idea as it strives to provide guidance to member states to enact legislation reform on gender-based violence. The Human Rights Commission, Malawi, is therefore pleased to participate in this important process. The views of the Commission, particularly those aligned to some paragraphs in the model law, are those emanating from various species of legislation relating to gender-based violence and practical experiences, government ministries, departments, and agencies. The Commission and other stakeholders have observed over the years. I don't know if I am allowed to go from an issue to another, starting from one, to look at the model itself.
Yes, please.
Okay. So, one, starting with 1.1, explanatory notes on the SADC model law on gender-based violence. 1.1.1, page 23, paragraph 1.2.13, on COVID-19 considerations and innovative measures, recommendations.
Yes.
GBV preventive and response mechanisms. This will read in tandem with regulations on public health, where pandemics or natural disasters are concerned. Issues for thought should include implementation of preventive and responsive measures, including awareness of reporting or referral pathways, coordination amongst key stakeholders, including law enforcement, provision of shelters, etc.
Yes, Bertha, continue.
Okay. 1.1.2, pages 31 and 32, mentions international instruments, plans, and strategies the GBV model law has taken into account, and which SADC member states may need to pay particular attention. Recommendation. We recommend the addition of C-190 on Violence and Harassment Convention, 2019, number 190, which is instrumental in guiding states on tackling violence and sexual harassment in workplaces. For instance, Malawi has a Gender Equality Act enacted in 2013, which is the first piece of legislation to specifically provide for sexual harassment. Even though it was enacted before the adoption of Convention number 190, it is instrumental in the Commission's work on sexual harassment, including urging public and private bodies to draft sexual harassment work policies and orienting staff on sexual harassment. The Commission's sexual harassment policy was also drafted with consideration of provisions of Convention number 190. Following the release of our policy, numerous bodies and private bodies have initiated drafting of their sexual harassment work policies. There have also been more reports and complaints made of sexual harassment to relevant bodies, including the Commission, claims which are being investigated. However, patriarchy is still a challenge in this area, as in other areas where the rights of women and girls are concerned. Awareness through different stakeholders and the engagement of men and boys is crucial, eliminating sexual harassment. (1.1.3), page 33, on access to justice and procedural protections. The following have been considered and drafted into the GBV model law. Prohibit any law, customary law, or practice and religious rule or practice from being used in GBV responses. Recommendation. Some response mechanisms require the usage of law. For instance, in criminal matters, the question therefore is, which narrative is this prohibition being made? Please avoid mediation that could harm the victim. Sorry, mediation that could harm the victim. Recommendation. The provision should include the following, particularly where the matter is criminal in nature. Maybe I don't know if I should continue with this. It's a long document. I don't know what pattern we can follow.
Okay. I think just to manage time, I think we would love to, you can send it to the Secretariat. Any written submissions, including other countries that may have written submissions for Eva to look at. But I'm sure she has noted the many recommendations, your reference to Convention 190, and she will take, if there are any opportunities to enrich the model law, she will take that into account. But any other country or yourself with further written submissions, we welcome them. You can send them to the Secretariat SADC-PF. Thank you very much, Betha.
Thank you.
Any other, you want to react to anything, Eva? Or you have taken notes?
Our learned colleagues that there is someone taking down your notes, but would be very happy to receive your written submission through the Secretariat, and I would definitely take them with the seriousness they deserve to enhance this model law, because that's why we need, that's why I did not want to speak for long, because I wanted to hear from you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So I encourage other countries with written submissions to send them as soon as possible to the SADC Secretariat. I know Zambia wishes to do so at some future date. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, sorry.
Secretary General?
Maybe just to indicate that we want to conclude our consultations in September, if anything. So those inputs, maybe if we could just maybe agree on a time frame so that we were able to consider everything all at once. The approval of the model law is scheduled for the 50th plenary assembly session of the forum, which will happen first week of December. But everything else in November should really be translation, cleaning up, among others. So I just needed to put it out there to negotiate the time frame for the input.
Thank you very much, SG, for clarity. I think those are the time frames. In order to give Eva adequate time, I suggest that you let us know in the next 2 or 3 weeks. In the course of early September, maybe SG. If we can have written submissions, that would be great, because he has to cross-reference and check and input it into the write-up. Thank you, SG, for that. I think everyone has taken note. Any further comments? Any comments, any questions? There appear to be.
Hello.
Anyone wants to speak?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead. Who is that?
Betha.
Yes, Betha.
Earlier on, we had a little girl talking from Malawi.
Yes.
She's just an example of the so many that are suffering sexually and otherwise. For a woman, we are grown-ups, we can be able to fight back. But children, some of which are in the napkins, they are being abused sexually. My cry is, us as elderly people, what is it that we can do to protect this little girl child? They are helpless, hopeless, under the hands of somebody who is grown up and is abusing them like that. As SADC, what is it that we are going to do seriously to help this girl child, baby girl, who is suffering under this elderly person? It's my cry and a question to say, let's think seriously. I was visiting orphanages, and I saw that most of the kids are suffering and are coming to the orphanages because they are suffering under the elderly people. What are we going to do as SADC? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betha. I think you echo the sentiments of all of us. As the SG earlier mentioned in reaction to that story, we all hope that we can move from talking to doing something. And in this context, I think we can commend SADC-PF that they are already ahead with a model SADC model law. If we can then, in our respective jurisdictions, once we approve of it generally, exert pressure or lobby our governments to domesticate the model law, those provisions that they deem appropriate, or all of it, that will be part of the action that we need. I think at the higher level, the SADC-PF is giving us the tools, and then it is up to each one of us in each country to use that resource and to ensure that there is appropriate legislation on the ground. And also education. I think that is important. But Betha, you echo the sentiments of everyone. It's traumatic experience. Something needs to be done. It's a pandemic, and we need to move. And thankfully, SADC-PF is moving in that direction, and we are grateful. Thank you, Betha. Any other comments? Any other comments? If there are no further comments.
Hello.
There is a request for participants. Please switch on the videos when they take to the floor.
Hello.
Yes.
This is Stella Toya from Malawi Human Rights Commission again.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you for the development of this model law from the SADC region. It is quite clear and evident that in our various jurisdictions, we've got a lot of gaps and lacunas in the law, and mostly because of clawback clauses that take rights from one and gives it in another form, at the same time takes it back. So as we're considering the model law, I know that the law will not always cover all aspects of life, but at the end of the day, we have got a framework that we can work with. And it will be important how each member state then reviews the various pieces of legislation that we have that are aimed to address gender-based violence and consolidate or harmonize them with this model law, so that at least within the region, we're applying similar kinds of law, although it would differ from one country to another because of the various cultural aspects that are there. In most jurisdictions like Malawi, where we've got a dual legal system, where both customary and received law are used, we find that much as the received law would try and protect women and girls and even men in different forms, but some of the cultural laws which are embedded in our traditions usually would take back those provisions that are meant to be progressive and protect women. So I think this gives us a platform to try and lobby with our governments and try and bring in changes that could help to strengthen the various pieces of laws that we have to protect women. So for example, in Malawi, we've gone on ahead to have a Gender Equality Act of 2013, but we've also got several supportive laws like the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, the Wills and Inheritance or Deceased Estates Act and Family Relations Act, and also the Children's Protection Law, apart from the Penal Code. But all these pieces of legislation usually still have a gap in terms of protecting women. So I was just trying to raise a red flag and say that we really need to work seriously with our own governments in order to see where we still have gaps to try and strengthen them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that intervention. That's what we need to do. And the problem that you allude to of clawback clauses is quite a challenge in our region, giving with one hand and taking with the other. But this model law is quite a progressive piece. I've perused through it, And if we can take it down to our own context, the national context, and run with it, we may make some progress. I think it's incumbent upon all of us human rights commissions to try to bring in some urgency to this matter. So thank you very much for that comment and the red flag that you raised. Thank you. Thank you, Stella. Any other comments? Question? Any other comment? And I'm quite impressed because I see that the participants have stayed stable almost up to this time. My screen here shows a stable figure throughout. Pauline and Ronald, are there any questions from the chat box you want to flag? Are you able to hear me? Pauline and Ronald, is there anything from the chat box you wish to raise? A question maybe has been deposited there?
There's nothing, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Any question? Otherwise, I proceed to the next item on the agenda. Linda, are you ready?
Yes, Prof. Thank you.
Okay, let me just ask Eva whether there is anything she wants to say.
No, Doc, I'm just looking forward to receiving all the submissions from the Human Rights Commission and our learned colleagues so that we can proceed to enhance our law.
Thank you so much. SG, is there anything you want to say? You know, this is very important to your organization. Anything you want to say before we call on Linda?
Not at all. Just to appreciate the presence of our human rights commissioners and the contributions that have been made so far. We're looking forward to your input and collaboration, once this has been adopted, to ensure that domestication really is supported at country level. Now that this is something that you align yourself to and see the value of. So that is all I would say. And we have so many partners working in this area. If you know any, kindly encourage them to reach out to SADC-PF. We are willing to engage and really mobilize support across board. And if it were possible, Chair, before we close, maybe Mr. Modise or Parna could share the roadmap for the appreciation of our commissioners so that they can see that this is ongoing and that they can also offer to come on board and mobilize the partners, or we can email it to save time. Thank you.
Yes, Modise, may I have, are you able to give a very quick overview? Otherwise, you can email it.
Morning, Prof. Because of the gadget that I've logged on using, I'm using the phone, it might be impossible for my side. Maybe we can request Ms. Mube to assist because she probably has it on their side.
Okay, then there's no problem. Then Mube, yeah, you're able to assist, or you will email it.
To share on screen, we'll have challenges, but I can speak to it with your permission, Judge.
Yes, I'll give you 3 minutes or so.
Thank you. Honorable Commissioners, Honorable SG, all protocol observed. So regarding the SADC model law on GBV consultation roadmap, The journey started on the 6th of August, which started with consultation with the media. On the 16th, there was the consultation with the lawyers, the SADC Lawyers Association. On the 18th of August, there was the launch, the official launch of the SADC Model Law on Consultation Stakeholder Engagement process. And today, that's where the journey is at, where we have, where the consultation have been focusing on the human rights commissions. Next on the calendar is the 25th, where the consultation will be focusing on the judges, juries, and judicial officers. And also on the 24th, there will have been a convening led by ARASA targeting the civil society. After the 25th, we then move on to the 30th, where there are two consultations in which the first consultation in the morning will target SADC ministries and departments of gender, followed by the consultations with police sector subco. We then move on to September the 2nd, with the consultation meeting for chairpersons of relevant parliamentary committees at national level, gender, children rights, legal affairs, police and justice will be convened, followed by the 9th of September, where the consultation process will focus on religious and traditional leaders. On the 13th of September 2021, the SADC-PF will also convene the consultation process with legal drafters from ministries of justice and parliaments of member states. And then on the 16th, there will be consultation, there will be a validation meeting through the joint sitting of the Regional Women Parliamentary Caucus and SADC-PF standing committees. On 21 September 2021, there will be a consultative meeting with UN agencies, donors and development partners. And then the roadmap as of now ends on the 30th of September, focusing on the SADC Model Law consultative meeting with regional parliaments, ECOWAS Parliament, Pan-African Parliament. Thank you. Over to you, Judge.
Thank you very much for that snapshot. Sorry for the roadmap. Thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for your attention, your comments, highly valued. Secretary General for the opportunity for this platform. Eva for your excellent work on drafting and the presentation today. It's now my singular honor to call upon Linda Naidu. She's a formidable force behind this project too, together with SADC-PF, an enabler of note. So it's my singular pleasure and honor to call upon her to give concluding and solidarity remarks. She is the UNDOC Regional Coordinator on GBV in the SADC region. I'm sure I'm correct, Linda. And it is my pleasure to call upon you to deliver your closing and solidarity remarks. Over to you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Program Director, for those kind words. Good afternoon, salutations. All protocols observed. I stand on the current protocol. Your Excellencies, Honorable Commissioners, Ombudspersons, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank all actors and stakeholders that have supported the various processes that have led us to this most important stage, whether it be through the provision of financial, technical, material, and human resources. Your contributions are recognized and appreciated. Specific mention is made of the excellent minds that have worked tirelessly to produce an excellent product that recognizes and skillfully incorporates key United Nations international human rights standards and norms. This has been localized and well aligned to the regional context, hence making this model law transformative. An effective response to gender-based violence needs to be victim-centered, ensures offender accountability, and of course, is human rights-based. This guidance is all well incorporated within the current model law. In addition, it considers responses to emergency situations such as the current COVID pandemic. Because GBV constitutes a violation of various human rights, SADC member states have an obligation to exercise due diligence on their commitments. Hence, this model law provides an excellent starting point. However, the model law needs to be owned and become a living document by member states. It further requires member states to prioritize gender-based violence, to domesticate any outstanding, relevant regional and international human rights instruments, to reform and to align its domestic laws to the model law, and to allocate adequate resources accordingly to make this work. Human rights commissioners and ombudspersons have a responsibility to provide strategic direction and to make strategic decisions on human rights issues to human rights institutions. It is therefore important to acknowledge the importance of your presence and participation in this process. The model law makes mention of the need to adopt a human rights-based approach to GBV legislation by ensuring that the legislation addresses the root causes of GBV and that the legislation allows for the inclusion of marginalized groups. I challenge you today to ensure that GBV is treated as a human rights issue and that GBV is a priority in the work of national human rights institutes. As such, I further urge you to consider the following practical steps to encourage your member states to ratify any outstanding international human rights instruments that are key for the prevention and mitigation of GBV, to develop opinions, recommendations, proposals on what a human rights-based approach to GBV legislation means, the root causes of GBV in your countries, and on what the inclusion of marginalized groups means from a very practical and legislative perspective, to provide advisory and technical assistance to your member states in the review and reform of your domestic legislation for purposes of domestication of the model law, to develop recommendations for the adoption of gender-based violence policies that are human rights centered, to develop recommendations for strategic implementation plans that incorporate the response, prevention, support, and protective measures that are appropriate and relevant for your countries, to mainstream GBV in all reporting processes to human rights bodies and mechanisms. I further emphasize that UNODC remains committed to providing technical and financial support to enable the SADC-PF and particular member states to eradicate GBV, especially within the criminal justice system in the region. I wish to thank the organizers, speakers, and attendees of the event. In particular, SADC-PF, our drafters, technical working group under the able leadership of the Secretary General. I thank you, Moyoto, regard